Poetry. Noteworthy names in this field include Marcelo de Gracia, Jose Garcia Villa, Angela Manala Gloria, Abelardo Sabido, Trinidad Torosa Sabido, and Rafael Zulueta de Costa. They turned out not only love poems, but patriotic, religious, descriptive, and reflective poems as well. They wrote in free verse, in odes and sonnets, and in other types. Poetry was original, spontaneous, commonly written, and later incorporated social consciousness. The short story. Probably because of the incentives provided by the publications like the Philippine Free Press, the Graphic, the Philippine Magazine, and college publications like the UP Literary Apprentice, poetry and the short story flourished during these times. Other writers during this time include Osmundo Santa Romana, Arturo Rutor, Paz Latorena's Sunset, and Jose Garcia Villa's Mir in Ita. From 1930 to 1940, the golden era of Filipino writing in English saw the short story writers who have arrived, like Jose Lansang's The Broken Parasol, Sinai C. Hamada's Talanta's Wife, Fausto Doqueño's Wanderlust, Amando G. Direct's His Gift and Yesterday, Amador T. Doguio's The Woman Who Looked Out of the Window, and many more. Characteristics of the short stories during this time are the following. There were still remnants of Spanish influence in the use of expressions that were florid, sentimental, exaggerated, and bombastic. Influence of the Western culture also was already evident. Mana!
Essays and other prose styles in 1925 to 1941. So essays in this period improved with the years in quality and quantity, content, subject, and its styles. So essayists like Carlos P. Romulo became even more eminent editorial writers. So the notable writers of essays during this period were, so first is political, social, reflective essay. Through their newspaper columns, the following became very popular. Namely, Federico Mangajas, Salvador P. Lopez, Pura Castrense, Vicente Albano Paces, Ariston Estrada, and Jose Lansang. So critical essays were espoused by Salvador Lopez, Ivy Malyari, Ignacio Manlapas, Jose Garcia Villa, Arturo B. Rotor, and Leopoldo E. Yepes. So an example of this is Maximo V. Sullivan's. They called it Brotherhood. So next is personal or familiar essays. So these essays were written by F.B. Icasiano, Alfredo Lechaco, Solomon V. Arnaldo, Amando Dairet, and Consuelo Gar. So some of notable works during this time is on 1940, Salvador P. Lopez, Literature and Society, which is a collection of critical reflections and serious essays, which also won the first prize in Commonwealth Literary Contest in 1940. In 1940, Camilo Usais published The Filipino Way of Life. It is a series of essays on the Filipino way of life, as drawn by history, folkways, philosophy, and psychology of the Philippines.
Year 1940, Camilo Usais published The Filipino Way of Life, a series of essays on the Filipino way of life as drawn from history, folkways, philosophy, and psychology of the Philippines. Year 1941, F.B. Icasiano or Mang Kiko was reprint of the best of Icasiano's essays in the Sunday Times magazine under the column From Maynila Hat. It is an essay of the common tao and is written with humor and sympathy. August 16, 1941. Carlos P. Romulo had an editorial printed in the Philippines Herald entitled I Am a Filipino. It was reprinted in his book My Brother, Americans in 1945 in New York by Doubleday and Corporation. Others easiest include Ignacio Manlapas, Vicente Albano Pasis, Fourth Malari, Jose M. Fernandez, Leopoldo Y. Yabes, Isidro L. Ritizos, Pura Santillan. The Philippine Writers League put out a collection of essays called Literature Under the Commonwealth. Amando G. Derritt, with his column Good Morning Judge, led others like Leon Maria Guerrero, Salvador P. Lopez, Vicente Albano Pasis, Jose A. Lansang, and Federico Mangahas.
Biography, 1925 to 1941. In 1935, I.P. Caballero and Marcelo de Gracia Concepcion wrote about Quezon. In 1938, the Great Malayan won a prize in the national contest sponsored by the Commonwealth of the Philippines. This was written by Carlos Quirino, the most famous biographer of the period. He also wrote Quezon, The Man of Destiny. In 1940, Ivy Malyaris' The Birth of Discontent revealed the sensitive touch of a writer who, in simple language, was able to reveal his profound thoughts and feelings. History. Not much about history has been written by Filipino writers. In 1937, with regard to literary history, we can cite Teofilo del Castillo's The Brief History of the Philippine Islands. 6. Publications. The Philippine Free Press provided the first incentives to Filipino writers in English by offering prizes to worthwhile contributions. Other publications followed suit. 7. Drama, 1925 to 1941. Drama during this period did not reach the heights attained by the novel or the short story. The UP provided the incentives when they introduced playwriting as a course and established the UP Little Theater.
How My Brother Brought Home a Wife is a short story authored by Manuel E. Arguela, who was well known for his short stories such as this story, and many of his works were published throughout the 1940s especially. So he lived between 1911 and 1944, at which point he was captured, tortured, and killed by the Japanese army. The story How My Brother Leon Brought Home a Wife is perhaps the most successful and popular short stories of Arguelas. The story is written from the point of view of a young boy named Baldo and his recollections of the night that he met his brother's wife Maria for the first time. The story is descriptive and eloquently written and makes you feel as though you were there yourself. The story starts when Baldo meeting Leon and Maria and how he took them on a ride home through the fields near their home on a cart pulled by the family bull. The story describes the smell, look, and feel of the fields and the surrounding areas, as well as speaks of Maria, describing her as gentle and full of laughter. It becomes apparent that Leon is taking Maria to meet his family for the first time, and she is nervous about meeting them, especially his father. Upon their journey to Leon's home, Leon is wondering why Baldo drove them to the wake or a stream instead of the Camino Real or the Royal Road. Baldo answered that he drove the wake because their father told him to do so. The wake road will serve as the test to Maria if she can live in the province, which differs a lot from the city where she lived in. But then it seems like Maria likes Leon's province. She described this as a beautiful, fresh air, clean and free of dust. During their journey, Maria was worried if Leon's father and family would like her. When they arrived home, father talked to Baldo, asking what happened during their travel. The father asked Baldo if Maria was afraid in their place. Baldo answered that Maria was not afraid, and instead she enjoyed the journey. The story ends with Leon's entire family talk to Maria. His father's voice became livelier than before when he talked to her, which means he accepted her wholeheartedly.
So another literary piece from the period of self-discovery and growth is The Footnote to the Youth, which was written by Jose Garcia Villa. Jose Garcia Villa is a poet, a critic, short story writer, and a painter. He is born in Singalang, Manila on 5th of August 1908. His parents were Simon Villa, who is a personal physician of Revolutionary General Emilio Aguinaldo, and Guenia Garcia. He graduated from UP High School in 1925 and enrolled in a pre-med course. So let's now tackle the short story Footnote to the Youth by Jose Garcia Villa. This is a simple but poignant story that compels the reader to value love and desire. Sometimes what we desire and love may not be the best thing to do. Sometimes we make decisions which are emotional and lack of understanding, and they end up defining and shaping our whole life. This is particularly true when people are in their youth. They are young and hopeful and want to follow their every whim without giving it a deeper thought. In this story, we come across such a young pair of Dudong and Chiang. They are completely enamored with each other and want to tie the wedding knot even though they are still teenagers. Dudong is adamant and his pursuit of Chiang, who happens to have another suitor, Lucio. He is much older and well settled in his life, but Chiang follows her and chooses Dudong. Dudong has a hard time convincing his father about his decision to marry. He wants his son to weigh all the pros and cons and then make an informed decision. However, Dudong is not to be moved from his resolution. In the end, they both get married and begin a hopeful journey together. The next year, Chiang gives birth to their first child. This reality hits them hard. They are teen parents and realize the enormity of their responsibility. Taking care of children and building a family is a serious thing. In the next 7 years, their family grows to a total of 9 with 7 kids. Chiang now regrets her decision, especially looking at Lucio, who is still childless after marrying another girl. She wonders if she would have the same fate if she had picked Lucio. But she dismisses such fleeting thought. Both of them are still devoted to each other and their large family. After some years, fate reverses time, and now their firstborn Blas comes to them with the same desire. He, still a teenager, wants to marry the girl of his dreams, Tina. Dudong realizes how history is repeating itself and warns Blas about the consequences of such a massive decision. However, like father like son, he ends up following the same route and marries his sweetheart at 17 years of age.
Sunset, written by Paz Laterina, is one of the literary works from the period of self-discovery. Paz Laterina was one of the notable writers of the first generation of Filipino English writers, in both literary writing and education. She was a poet, editor, author, and teacher. Paz Laterina earned her Bachelor of Science degree in Education at the University of the Philippines College of Education and took a graduate course at the University of Santo Tomas. She taught English at the UST while still a freshman in college. Let us now tackle about the story in The Sunset. Sunset is a story about the man and the woman who fell in love without knowing each other's background. The woman, who was a maid, ran from her work and found a shop during a rainy night to stay in. The woman was so frightened, but the man comforted her and let her stay in the shop. As the woman explained why did she run from her work, the man was so terrified, since the woman was being harassed by the brother of Senorita, the woman's boss. As the man and the woman kept their moments, the man fell in love with the woman without knowing its background and wants to marry her. Their problem was they got no money to spend for their wedding, and the man's salary was too low for it. That's why the woman kept finding a way to have their wedding. The woman asked for the help of her senorita since she's so close to her and asked for its salary that senorita also offered a surprise money for their wedding. The woman chose to accept it without the permission of the man, but she's not going to say that that's from her. Instead, it will be directly given to the man. After that, the man went home and have a surprise for the woman, but he's not going to reveal it yet. The woman keeps waiting for the surprise, but it's not what she expected. The only surprise was a violet scarf, just like what she wore when they first met, and no clue about the marriage. Since then, they become cold to each other and decided that they should work together, find a job, and save their marriage. The man chose to let go of the woman and bring her back to the gate of darkness.